Hello and welcome back to English in Advance. I am your host, Jessica, and I am so incredibly happy that you have decided to join me today. Whether you are listening to this on your morning commute, while you are cooking dinner, or perhaps while you are taking a relaxing walk, you are doing something wonderful for yourself by focusing on your English skills. Today we are going to dive deep into a topic that makes us all human. We are going to talk about feelings and emotions. This is not just about learning a list of vocabulary words, because we all know that memorizing lists can get boring. Instead, we are going to focus on how to speak naturally in real situations. We want to move beyond the basic words like happy, sad, and angry. We want to give you the tools to express the complex, beautiful, and sometimes messy reality of how you actually feel. By the end of this podcast, you will feel more confident sharing your inner world with friends, colleagues, and loved ones in English. So settle in, take a deep breath, and let's get started on this journey to fluency together. When we start learning English, the first question we usually learn to answer is simply, "How are you?" And almost every textbook gives the same answer, which is, "I am fine, thank you, and you." While this is grammatically correct, it is not how we really connect with people. If you truly want to master English conversation, you need to learn the nuances of emotion. Let's start with positive emotions because we all want to share good news. Imagine you just received a promotion at work or you finally passed a difficult exam. If you just say, "I am happy," it is okay, but it is a little bit flat. It does not capture the energy of the moment. A native speaker might use a word like thrilled. To be thrilled means you are extremely happy and excited. Let's try putting that into a sentence. You could say, "I was thrilled when I heard the news." Try saying that out loud right now, wherever you are. "I was thrilled when I heard the news." Do you feel the difference? It sounds much more energetic. Another wonderful word for this is elated. Elated suggests a feeling of being lifted up by happiness. It is often used for major life events like getting married or having a baby. You might say she was absolutely elated to see her family again. Notice how I added the word absolutely before elated. We often use intensifiers like absolutely, really, or so to make the emotion stronger. Now let's look at a situation where you are happy, but in a very calm and peaceful way. Maybe you are sitting in a comfortable chair with a good book and a cup of tea. You are not jumping up and down with excitement, so you would not say you are thrilled. Instead, you might say you are content. Being content means you are satisfied with what you have, and you do not need anything else in that moment. It is a beautiful feeling. You could say, "I feel so content just sitting here watching the sunset." It is a soft word for a soft feeling. A similar word is grateful. When you appreciate the good things in your life, you feel grateful. You might tell a friend that you are grateful for their help. This is a very common and polite way to deepen a friendship. You can say, "I am so grateful that you listened to me today." Using words like content and grateful shows a high level of emotional intelligence and English proficiency. Of course, life is not always about happiness. We all have days where we feel low, and it is important to know how to express that without feeling embarrassed. If you are just having a bad day, you might say you are feeling a bit down. This is a very natural and gentle phrase. You could say, "I'm feeling a bit down today, but I am sure I will feel better tomorrow." If the feeling is stronger, perhaps because of a disappointment or bad news, you might use the word devastated. This is a very strong word, so be careful using it for small problems. You would not be devastated if you dropped your ice cream, but you might be devastated if you lost your job or ended a relationship. It implies a heavy shock. For example, you could say he was devastated when he found out the bad news. It is important to use the right intensity so people understand the gravity of your situation. Sometimes sadness is mixed with tiredness. In our busy modern world, many of us feel this way. If you are extremely tired, you can say you are exhausted. But if that tiredness comes from working too hard for too long without a break, we have a specific phrasal verb for that which is burned out. To be burned out means you have no energy left, physically or mentally. You might hear a colleague say, "I have been working 60 hours a week and I am completely burned out." If you hear someone say this, it is a cue for you to show empathy. We will talk more about showing empathy later, but for now, just remember that burned out is a very common expression in the workplace. Another phrase for being extremely tired is drained. You can feel drained after a long meeting or an argument. It feels like all the energy has been pulled out of you like water down a drain. You could say talking to him always leaves me feeling emotionally drained. Let's shift gears and talk about anxiety and nervousness. This is very common, especially when speaking a new language or doing something new. A great idiom to describe nervousness is having butterflies in your stomach. This paints a picture of that fluttering feeling you get in your belly before a presentation or a first date. You can simply say, "I have butterflies in my stomach about the meeting tomorrow." If you are feeling generally uneasy or worried that something bad might happen, you can say you are on edge. Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff where you cannot relax because you might fall. That is the feeling. You might say, "Everyone in the office has been on edge since the rumors about layoffs started." It means the atmosphere is tense. Another useful word here is apprehensive. This is a more formal or sophisticated way of saying you are nervous about the future. You might say, "I am a little apprehensive about moving to a new city." It is a great word to use in professional settings where you want to sound mature and thoughtful. Now, we must address anger and frustration because these are powerful emotions that need careful handling in conversation. If you are just a little bit angry or bothered by something, you can say you are annoyed. For example, "I was annoyed that the train was late again." It is a mild inconvenience. However, if you are extremely angry, you can use the word furious. Furious is much stronger than angry. You could say she was furious when she found out he lied to her. There is also a colorful idiom for sudden anger, which is to lose one's cool. To lose your cool means you stopped being calm and got angry. You might tell a story saying, "I tried to stay calm, but eventually I lost my cool and shouted." Another one is to hit the roof. This means to get very angry very suddenly. For instance, my dad hit the roof when he saw the dent in the car. Learning these idioms makes your English sound much more natural and less robotic. Let comes to a very complex mix of feelings, which is when we feel confused or unsure. Sometimes you do not know what to feel. In this case, you can say you feel conflicted. Being conflicted means you have two opposing feelings at the same time. Maybe you got a job offer in another country. You are happy about the job, but sad to leave your family. You would say, "I feel very conflicted about the decision." Another phrase is mixed feelings. You can simply say, "I have mixed feelings about the new policy." This tells the listener that you see both the good and the bad sides. It is a very honest way to speak. One of the most important aspects of discussing feelings in English is knowing how to respond when someone shares their emotions with you. This is where you build relationships. If someone tells you they are thrilled, you should match their energy. You can say, "That is amazing," or "I am so happy for you." If someone tells you they are devastated or feeling down, you need to lower your voice and show concern. You can say, "I am so sorry to hear that," or "That must be really tough." A very powerful phrase to validate someone's feelings is, "I can imagine how you feel." Even if you have not been in that exact situation, saying, "I can imagine how difficult that is for you," makes the other person feel heard and understood. Do not rush to give advice. Often people just want to be understood. Simple phrases like, "I am here for you," or "Let me know if you need anything," go a very long way. Let's practice putting these into a narrative context, because stories are how we remember things best. Imagine you were telling a friend about your week. Instead of saying, "I had a busy week," try to detail the emotions. Listen to this example. "I started the week feeling a bit apprehensive because of a big project. By Wednesday, I was completely burned out and actually felt a bit down. But then, on Friday, I finished the work and my boss was thrilled with the results. Now, I am just feeling content and ready to relax." Notice how that story flows. It takes the listener on a journey from nervousness to exhaustion to success, and finally to peace. I want you to try this. Think about your last week. Pick 3 distinct emotions you felt. Try to string them together into a short story in your mind. Did you feel frustrated, then relieved, then grateful? Narrating your life in English is one of the best ways to become fluent. We also need to talk about the physical sensations that come with emotions, because native speakers often describe feelings physically. We already mentioned butterflies in the stomach. Another one is "my heart sank." This is used when you suddenly feel disappointed or sad. For example, "My heart sank when I saw the rejection letter." It describes that heavy feeling in your chest. Conversely, if you are scared, you might say, "My blood ran cold." This sounds dramatic, but it is used for sudden, intense fear. You could say, "My blood ran cold when I heard the noise downstairs." If you are very angry, you might say, "My blood was boiling." It creates a vivid image of heat and pressure. Using these physical descriptions helps paint a picture for the listener. Let's discuss the concept of hiding emotions versus showing them. In English, if you keep your emotions inside and do not talk about them, we say you are bottling up your feelings. Think of putting liquid in a bottle and putting the cap on tight. We often say it is not healthy to bottle up your feelings. On the other hand, if you cry openly or show a lot of emotion, someone might say you are wearing your heart on your sleeve. This is a beautiful idiom. If you wear your heart on your sleeve, you are open and honest about how you feel. You might say she always wears her heart on her sleeve, so you know exactly when she is upset. As we continue to explore the landscape of human emotion, let's touch on surprise. Surprise can be good or bad. If it is a good surprise, you can say you were astonished or amazed. Astonished means very surprised. You could say, "I was astonished by how beautiful the view was." If the surprise is confusing or hard to believe, you might use the word baffled. Baffled means you are confused and cannot understand something. For example, "I was completely baffled by his strange behavior." It implies you are trying to figure it out, but you cannot. Another great word is stunned. Stunned can be used for good or bad situations where you are so surprised you cannot react immediately. You might be stunned by a sudden insult or stunned by a magnificent performance. Now I want to address a very specific feeling that is common in the age of social media, which is the fear of missing out, often called FOMO. While FOMO is an acronym, we use it in conversation. You might say, I did not want to go to the party, but I had a bad case of FOMO. Related to this is the feeling of envy or jealousy. Jealousy is when you are afraid of losing something you have, while envy is wanting what someone else has. If your friend buys a new house, you might be envious. You could say, I am a little envious of your new kitchen. It is okay to admit this if you say it with a smile. It shows you are human. Let's talk about how tone of voice changes the meaning of these words. If you say, I am fine with a falling tone and a heavy sigh, it actually means you are not fine at all. English relies heavily on intonation. If I say that is great with a flat voice, it sounds sarcastic. It sounds like I do not care. But if I say that is great with a rising, energetic tone, it sounds genuine. When you are practicing these words, do not just read them. Act them out. Stand in front of a mirror. Look at your facial expressions. If you are saying you are furious, your eyebrows should be down. If you are saying you are delighted, you should be smiling. Your body language must match your vocabulary, or people will feel confused by your message. I want to give you some advice on how to ask deep questions about feelings. Instead of just asking, how was your day? Try asking, how are you holding up? We use how are you holding up when we know someone is going through a difficult time. It acknowledges their struggle. Or you can ask, what has been on your mind lately? This invites the person to talk about their thoughts and worries. If you want to ask about a specific event, you can say, how did that make you feel? This is an open invitation for them to use the vocabulary we are discussing today. Let's go back to the idea of being overwhelmed. This is a very popular word today. Overwhelmed means you have too much to deal with. It can be too much work, too much emotion, or too much sensory input. You can be overwhelmed with joy, which is good, meaning you have so much happiness you might cry. But usually, if someone just says, I am overwhelmed, they mean they are stressed. A good response to this is to offer help. You can say, that sounds like a lot to handle. Can I help you with anything? There is also a set of words we use to describe feelings about the past. If you miss the past, you feel nostalgic. Nostalgia is that bittersweet feeling when you remember happy times that are gone. You might look at an old photo and say, I feel so nostalgic looking at our college pictures. If you regret something in the past, you might say you feel guilty or ashamed. Guilt is feeling bad about what you did. Shame is feeling bad about who you are. These are heavy emotions. You might say, I feel guilty that I forgot your birthday. A good friend would reply, do not worry about it. I forgive you. Let's weave in some slang that you might hear in movies or casual conversation. If someone is very excited, they might say they are pumped or stoked. These are very informal. You would say, I am stoked for the concert tonight. If someone is upset or disappointed, they might say they are bummed. You could say, I am really bummed that the show got canceled. If someone is acting crazy because of strong emotions, we might say they are freaking out. Freaking out can be good or bad. You can freak out because you won the lottery, or freak out because you saw a spider. Context is everything. As we approach the later part of this discussion, I want to emphasize that expanding your emotional vocabulary helps you understand yourself better. When you can name a feeling, you can manage it better. If you can say, I am feeling irritable because I am hungry, you can solve the problem by eating. In English, we even have a word for this, which is hangry. Hangry is a combination of hungry and angry. It is a funny word, but it describes a real feeling. You can say, sorry I snapped at you, I am just hangry. Let's practice a scenario involving a misunderstanding. This happens often. Imagine you thought your friend was angry with you, but they were just tired. You could say, I was worried I had offended you. To offend means to make someone upset or angry. Your friend might reply, no, I was not offended, just totally wiped out. Wiped out is another great phrasal verb for exhausted. This exchange clears up the emotional confusion. There is also a beautiful word called relief. Relief is the feeling you get when something bad stops or when a worry goes away. Imagine you lost your wallet and then found it. You would say, what a relief. You can also say, I am so relieved. It feels like a weight has been lifted off your shoulders. That is another idiom for you. A weight off my shoulders means a burden has been removed. Finally, let's talk about hope. Hope is a positive emotion about the future. If you are hopeful, you believe good things will happen. You can say, I am hopeful that we will find a solution. A similar but stronger word is optimistic. If you are optimistic, you generally expect good outcomes. You can say, try to stay optimistic. The opposite is pessimistic, thinking bad things will happen. In English conversation, we generally try to encourage people to be optimistic. You might say, keep your chin up. This idiom means stay positive and do not give up. We have covered the basics of happiness, sadness, and workplace stress, but now we are going to step into the most complex arena of human life, which is our relationships with other people. This is where emotions get really interesting and sometimes a little bit messy. Whether it is with a partner, a best friend, or a family member, knowing how to navigate the waters of love, trust, and conflict is essential for true fluency. When you can handle a disagreement in English without losing your cool, or tell someone exactly how much they mean to you without sounding like a greeting card, you know you have reached a high level of skill. So let's settle back in and explore the vocabulary of the heart. Let's start with the warm and fuzzy feelings. We all know the word love, but love has so many different flavors. If you just met someone and you think about them all the time, you might have a crush on them. Having a crush is that exciting, nervous feeling of early attraction. You might say to your friend, I think I have a huge crush on the new guy at work. It is a cute and innocent phrase. If the feeling gets stronger and you fall deeply in love very quickly, we use the idiom head over heels. You can say he is head over heels in love with her. It paints a picture of someone tumbling down a hill because they are so dizzy with love. It is a very romantic expression. But love is not just about romance. It is also about deep affection for friends and family. A beautiful word to use here is cherish. To cherish means to protect and love something or someone very dearly. You might say, I cherish the time I spend with my grandmother. It sounds much deeper and more emotional than just saying, I like spending time with her. Another strong word is adore. Adore means to love and respect someone deeply. You might say, I absolutely adore my niece. She is so funny. Using words like cherish and adore makes your English sound rich and soulful. However, relationships are not always smooth sailing. Sometimes we have problems. Let's talk about trust. Trust is the foundation of any relationship. If you trust someone completely, you can say, I trust him with my life. But if someone breaks that trust, you might feel betrayed. Betrayal is a very painful emotion. It is when someone you trust hurts you. We have a very vivid idiom for this called stabbed in the back. If someone betrays you, you can say, I felt like I was stabbed in the back. It sounds violent, but it describes the sharp pain of emotional betrayal. If you are suspicious that someone is not being honest, you might say, I am skeptical. Being skeptical means you are not sure if you believe them. You might say, I was a bit skeptical of his excuse for being late. This brings us to the topic of arguments. Arguments are inevitable. In English, we have many words for this. A small argument might be called a tiff or a squabble. These are funny little words for unimportant fights. You might say we had a little tiff about whose turn it was to do the dishes. It is not serious. But if the argument is loud and angry, we might call it a row or a heated argument. If you are in a heated argument, emotions are running high. You might say things you regret. Afterward, you might feel remorse. Remorse is a deep feeling of regret and guilt for doing something wrong. It is stronger than just saying sorry. You might say he was filled with remorse after shouting at his wife. When you want to fix an argument, we call that making up. You can say we fought yesterday, but we made up this morning. A great phrase to use when you want to resolve tension is clear the air. To clear the air means to talk openly about a problem so that there are no more bad feelings. You could say, I think we need to sit down and clear the air. It is a very mature and constructive thing to suggest. Another diplomatic phrase is, I think we got off on the wrong foot. We use this when you meet someone and the first interaction is bad. You want to start over. You say, sorry, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Let me introduce myself again. This shows great social intelligence. Let's look at the feeling of being cautious in a relationship. Sometimes, if a person is very sensitive or easily angered, you feel like you have to be very careful with what you say. The idiom for this is walking on eggshells. Imagine walking on fragile eggshells and trying not to break them. That is the feeling. You might say, I feel like I am walking on eggshells around my boss this week because he is in such a bad mood. It is a stressful way to live, and knowing this phrase helps you explain that stress to others. Now, I want to talk about a very specific feeling called resentment. Resentment is when you feel angry about something for a long time because you feel you were treated unfairly. It is like a slow-burning fire. Maybe your brother always got more attention than you when you were kids, and you still feel resentment. You can say, I harbor some resentment toward him. To harbor means to hold inside like a ship in a harbor. It is important to let go of resentment for your own peace of mind. On the flip side of conflict is forgiveness. Forgiveness is a powerful release. When you forgive, you stop being angry. But sometimes you are not ready to forgive. You might say, I am still working through my feelings. This is a very healthy thing to say. It means you are processing the emotion and you need time. You can also say, I need some space. Taking space means spending time alone to calm down. If someone asks you for space, it is important to respect that. Let's shift gears to a very common feeling for English learners, which is vulnerability. Being vulnerable means letting your guard down and showing your true self, even if you might get hurt or make a mistake. Speaking a new language is an act of vulnerability. You are risking embarrassment every time you open your mouth. But vulnerability is also where connection happens. You can say, I felt very vulnerable sharing my story with the class. It is a brave state to be in. Related to this is the feeling of insecurity. If you feel insecure, you are not confident. You might be insecure about your accent. Everyone has insecurities. Admitting them can actually make you more confident. You can say, I used to be insecure about my grammar, but now I just focus on communicating. I want to introduce a concept called emotional intelligence. This is the ability to understand and manage your own emotions and the emotions of others. People with high emotional intelligence are good listeners. They use phrases like, I hear what you are saying and that must be very frustrating for you. They validate feelings. To validate means to confirm that a feeling is acceptable. If your friend is sad, do not say, stop crying. That invalidates them. Instead, say it is okay to cry. That validates them. Learning these validation phrases will make you a wonderful friend and a great conversationalist in English. Let's tell another story to practice these relationship words. Picture a couple. Let's call them Sarah and Mike. Sarah came home from work feeling drained. She walked in the door and saw that the kitchen was a mess. She felt a flash of irritation. Mike was on the couch watching TV, looking perfectly content. Sarah tried to bite her tongue. To bite your tongue means to stop yourself from saying something angry, but the irritation turned into frustration. She said, Mike, I am exhausted, and seeing this mess makes me feel unappreciated. Mike was taken aback. He said, I am sorry, I did not mean to make you feel that way. I was just taking a break. They sat down to clear the air. Sarah admitted she was stressed about work, and Mike admitted he had been lazy. They reached a compromise. A compromise is when both sides give a little to reach an agreement. Sarah felt relieved that they did not have a big row. They ended the evening feeling connected again. See how that story used the vocabulary? Drained, irritation, content, bite your tongue, unappreciated, taken aback, clear the air, compromise, relieved, connected. This is how real life happens. It is a series of small emotional adjustments. Now let's talk about empathy in more detail. Empathy is feeling with someone. Sympathy is feeling for someone. There is a difference. If your friend loses a parent, you feel sympathy. You are sad that they are sad. If you have also lost a parent, you feel empathy because you know exactly how it hurts. A great phrase for sympathy is my deepest condolences. We use this in formal situations of death or tragedy. In casual situations, we just say, I am so sorry. The tone is everything here. You need to sound soft and sincere. Sometimes emotions are not about other people, but about ourselves and our own potential. Let's talk about ambition. Ambition is a strong desire to achieve something. If you are ambitious, you are driven. Being driven means you have an internal motor pushing you forward. But sometimes ambition brings fear. We call this the fear of failure. It is the voice in your head that says, what if I cannot do it? The opposite is the fear of success, which sounds strange, but some people are afraid of how their life will change if they succeed. You might say, I am hesitating to apply for the manager position because I am afraid of the extra responsibility. This is a very honest admission. Let's look at the feeling of being stuck. Sometimes in life, we feel like we are not moving forward. We call this being in a rut. If you are in a rut, you are doing the same boring things every day. You might say, I feel like I am stuck in a rut. I need a new adventure. This is usually the feeling that comes before a big change. It is an uncomfortable feeling, but it is useful because it motivates you to change. Now, I want to talk about a very special emotion called awe. Awe is the feeling of being in the presence of something vast and great. You might feel awe when you look at the stars, or when you stand in front of a grand cathedral, or when you see a baby being born. We say I was in awe of the performance, or simply that was awesome. Although, be careful, because Americans use awesome for almost anything, like a good sandwich. But the true meaning of awe is something that makes you feel small and humble. Being humble is a virtue. It means you do not think you are better than others. You can say he is very successful, but he remains humble. Let's mix in some fun slang about feelings. If someone is acting crazy or irrational, we might say they are losing the plot. This is British slang, but it is understood in many places. It means they have lost touch with reality. If someone is very calm under pressure, we say they are cool as a cucumber. It is a funny idiom, but very common. You could say, even during the emergency, the pilot was cool as a cucumber. If someone is very sad and complaining a lot, we might call them a Debbie Downer. This is a cultural reference to a character who always brings the mood down. You might say, "Do not be such a Debbie Downer. Let's try to have fun." I also want to address the physical side of nervousness again because it is so common. We talked about butterflies, but have you heard of cold feet? To get cold feet means to suddenly become too afraid to do something you plan to do. Usually something big, like getting married or buying a house. You might say he got cold feet at the last minute and canceled the wedding. It does not mean his feet were actually cold. It means he lost his courage. Courage is a beautiful word. It is not the absence of fear. It is feeling the fear and doing it anyway. You are showing courage right now by learning English. Let's talk about the feeling of being misunderstood. This is very painful. You say something and people take it the wrong way. You feel frustrated and isolated. You might say that came out wrong. This is a great phrase to use when you make a mistake. You say, "Wait, that came out wrong. Let me rephrase that." It saves you from a lot of trouble. If you feel like no one understands you, you might say, "I feel like I am speaking a different language," even when you are speaking your mother tongue. It is a metaphor for a lack of connection. There is also a feeling called anticipation, which we touched on. But let's look at the negative side of it, which is dread. Dread is a heavy feeling in the pit of your stomach. The pit of your stomach is the center of your belly where you feel deep emotions. You might say, "I have a knot in the pit of my stomach." A knot implies tension. You feel tight and twisted inside. This happens when you are worried. To fix this, we say you need to unwind. To unwind means to relax, like untying the knot. You can say, "I like to unwind with a warm bath and some jazz music." Let's discuss the concept of emotional baggage again because it is so relevant to relationships. Sometimes we project our feelings onto other people. To project means to put your own feelings onto someone else. For example, if you are angry at yourself, you might start shouting at your partner. You are projecting your anger. Being self-aware helps you stop doing this. You can say, "I realized I was projecting my stress onto him, so I apologized." This shows a very high level of maturity. Now let's talk about happiness in the context of laughter. Laughter is the best medicine, they say. If something is very funny, you can say it is hilarious. If you laugh so hard you cannot stop, we say you have the giggles. This usually happens when you are tired or nervous. If you laugh very loudly, it is a belly laugh. And if something is just mildly amusing, you might just chuckle. A chuckle is a soft, low laugh. Knowing these different words for laughter helps you describe social situations better. You can say we shared a good chuckle over the mistake. I want to give you a strategy for when you are feeling an emotion in English, but you do not know the word. Do not panic. Describe the situation or the action. If you forget the word for jealous, you can say, I felt like I wanted what she had and I was angry about it. People will understand. If you forget the word for relieved, you can say, I felt like a heavy weight was gone and I could breathe again. This is called circumlocution, talking around the word. It is a vital skill for learners. Never let a missing word stop your conversation. Just describe the feeling. Let's go back to the idea of mood swings. Some days we are up and down. We call this being on an emotional roller coaster. You can say this week has been an emotional roller coaster. 1 minute I was happy about the news. The next minute I was worried about the cost. It is a vivid image. We also use the phrase mixed emotions. I have mixed emotions about leaving my job. I am excited for the new one, but sad to leave my colleagues. This is a perfectly natural state to be in. As we get deeper into this topic, I want to ask you about your support system. Who do you talk to when you have these feelings? We often say, I need a shoulder to cry on. A shoulder to cry on is a comforting friend who listens to your problems. You might say she has always been a shoulder to cry on for me, or perhaps you need to vent. To vent means to let out all your frustrations by talking loudly and quickly. You can say, do you have a minute? I really need to vent about my day. A good friend will say, go ahead, let it all out. Let's touch on the feeling of indifference. Indifference is the lack of feeling. It is when you do not care one way or the other. You might say, I am indifferent to the result of the game. I do not care who wins. Sometimes indifference is a defense mechanism. We pretend not to care, so we do not get hurt. But true connection requires caring. There's also a feeling called nostalgia, which we mentioned briefly. Let's expand on it. Nostalgia can be triggered by a smell, a song, or a photo. It is a longing for the past. You might say that song takes me back. To take someone back means to transport them to a memory. You can say seeing those old toys really took me back to my childhood. It is a sweet, sentimental feeling. Now let's talk about the future of your English journey and the feelings associated with it. You should feel proud of every step. Do not compare yourself to others. Comparison is the thief of joy. That is a famous quote. If you look at other people and think they are better than you, you will lose your happiness. Focus on your own progress. Be patient with yourself. Patience is a feeling of calm endurance. It is waiting without getting angry. I want to practice another scenario with you. Imagine, say you are at a job interview. You are nervous. The interviewer asks you, how do you handle pressure? Do you want to describe your emotions and your actions? You could say, well, when I feel pressure, I definitely feel a sense of urgency, but I try to stay grounded. To stay grounded means to stay calm and practical. I make a list of tasks and I focus on one thing at a time. This prevents me from feeling overwhelmed. This answer is excellent because it acknowledges the feeling, urgency, but shows you can manage it. Let's look at the word awkward again because it is so useful. There is a phrase called an awkward silence. This happens when conversation stops and no one knows what to say. It can be painful, but you can break the silence by asking a question. You can say so. What have you been up to lately? Do not be afraid of the silence. Sometimes silence is comfortable. We call that comfortable silence. That is when you are with a good friend and you do not need to talk to feel happy. We are covering a lot of vocabulary today, and I know it might feel like a lot. That is a feeling too. You might feel saturated. Saturated means full, like a sponge that cannot hold any more water. If you feel saturated, take a break. Pause the podcast, stretch, drink some water. Your brain needs rest to process new information. Learning is not just about input. It is about digestion. I want to leave you with a thought about kindness. Kindness is love in action. It is a feeling of warmth toward others. When you are kind to someone, you often feel better yourself. We call this the helper's high. It is a psychological effect where helping others makes you happy. So if you are feeling down, try doing something nice for someone else. It might just lift your spirits. To lift your spirits means to make you feel happier. Life is a mixture of light and shadow, and sometimes we have to deliver or receive bad news. This requires a very specific set of emotional vocabulary. It is about being gentle and direct at the same time. If you have to tell someone something sad, you might start by saying, "I am afraid I have some bad news." The phrase "I am afraid" here does not mean you are scared. It is a polite way to soften the blow. It warns the listener to prepare themselves. If someone tells you bad news, your reaction is crucial. You might be shocked. You might say, "I am at a loss for words." This is a powerful phrase. It means the news is so big that you cannot find the language to express your feelings. It is a very honest and human response. Let's talk about grief. Grief is the intense sorrow caused by loss. It is a wave that comes and goes. You might say grief comes in waves. Some days you feel fine, other days you feel overwhelmed. If you are comforting someone who is grieving, do not try to fix it. You can say, "I cannot imagine what you are going through, but I am here for you." Another gentle phrase is, "Take all the time you need." This gives them permission to be sad, which is a great gift. Sometimes people try to be strong. They put on a brave face. To put on a brave face means to pretend you are okay when you are not, usually to protect others from worrying. You might say she put on a brave face for her children, but inside she was heartbroken. Being heartbroken is a very literal description of that crushing feeling in your chest. But let's balance the heavy with the light. Let's talk about hope and dreams. When you talk about your future, your eyes should light up. You can say, "I have a burning desire to travel the world." A burning desire is a passion that does not go away. It is hot and bright. You might say, "It has always been my dream to write a novel." If you are working towards that dream, you can say, "I am chasing my dreams." Chasing implies action and movement, but sometimes dreams feel far away. You might feel discouraged. Discouraged means you have lost your courage or your confidence. You might say, "I felt a bit discouraged after the rejection, but I am not giving up." That is the spirit. Resilience is the ability to bounce back. You can say, "I am working on my resilience." It is a muscle you can build. Now, I want to teach you about the concept of bittersweet memories again, but in the context of moving forward. When you leave a chapter of your life behind, like graduating from university or moving to a new city, you feel sentimental. Sentimental means you have a tender feeling for the past. You might keep a ticket stub or a dried flower because it has sentimental value. It is not worth money, but it is worth feelings. You can say, "I am a very sentimental person. I keep everything." This tells people that you value memories and connections. Let's practice a more advanced storytelling technique. I want you to think about a time you overcame a fear. This is a classic narrative arc. It starts with the status quo, then a challenge, then a struggle, and finally, a victory. Let me give you an example. I used to be terrified of public speaking. Just the thought of it made my palms sweat. Palm sweating is a physical sign of anxiety. I would avoid any situation where I had to speak in front of a crowd. I felt like a coward. A coward is someone who has no courage. But then my best friend asked me to give a speech at her wedding. I was torn. I wanted to refuse, but I loved her too much to say no. So I spent weeks preparing. I was a bundle of nerves. A bundle of nerves is an idiom for being very nervous. On the day of the wedding, my heart was pounding in my chest. I stood up, my knees were shaking, and I looked at the audience. I took a deep breath and started to speak. At first, my voice was shaky, but then I saw my friends smiling. A wave of calm washed over me. I finished the speech and everyone applauded. I felt a rush of adrenaline and pride. I realized that the fear was just a feeling, not a wall. Do you see the structure? Terrified, palms sweat, coward, torn, bundle of nerves, pounding heart, shaky, wave of calm, rush of adrenaline, pride. This story takes the listener on a journey. It is not just facts, it is feelings. When you share a story like this, you inspire people. You show them your vulnerability and your strength. I encourage you to write down a story like this about your own life. Use the vocabulary we have learned today. Let's discuss the feeling of regret. Regret is looking back and wishing you had done things differently. We often say, hindsight is 20/20. This means that when you look back, everything is clear. You can say in hindsight, I should have taken that job. But dwelling on regret is not healthy. To dwell on something means to think about it too much. You might say, do not dwell on the past. Look to the future. A healthier emotion is acceptance. Acceptance is when you make peace with reality. You can say, I have come to accept that I cannot change what happened. This brings a sense of closure. Closure is the feeling that a difficult emotional chapter is finished. Now let's talk about surprise and wonder. We live in a miraculous world. When you see something incredible, you might be awestruck. Awestruck means struck by awe. You might be awestruck by the northern lights or a beautiful painting. You can also be dumbfounded. Dumbfounded means you are so surprised you cannot speak. You are struck dumb. It is usually used for negative or confusing surprises. I was dumbfounded by his stupidity, but let's focus on the positive. Being captivated means something holds your attention completely. You can be captivated by a good book or a charming person. You might say he has a captivating smile. We also need to talk about the feeling of belonging. This is a deep human need. To belong means to feel like you fit in, that you are part of a tribe. When you move to a new country, you might feel like an outsider. An outsider is someone who does not belong. But eventually, you make friends, and you start to feel at home. You can say, I finally feel like I belong here. This is a warm, secure feeling. The opposite is alienation. Alienation is feeling isolated and estranged from others. It is a cold, lonely feeling. Language is the bridge that cures alienation. By learning English, you are building a bridge to the world. Let's touch on the feeling of anticipation regarding this very podcast. You might be wondering what comes next. Curiosity is a driving force. If you are on the edge of your seat, it means you are very excited to know what happens. You can say the movie was so thrilling. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. We also have the word suspense. Suspense is the feeling of excitement and worry about what might happen. You might say, "The suspense is killing me." This is an exaggeration, of course, but it is very common. I want to address the feeling of burnout again because it is so important. If you push yourself too hard, you will crash. To crash means to suddenly lose all energy. You need to recharge. You can say, "I need to go to the countryside to recharge my batteries." This is a metaphor. We are like batteries. We need to be plugged into a source of energy. That source might be rest, nature, or time with loved ones. Self-care is not selfish. It is necessary. Let's talk about how to express enthusiasm for someone else's success. This is a sign of a good character. If your friend wins, you should be happy for them. You can say, "I am over the moon for you," or "You deserve it." Avoid being a sore loser if you lose. A sore loser is someone who gets angry when they do not win. Instead, be a good sport. A good sport is someone who is polite and cheerful, win or lose. You can say, "Good game. You played really well." This shows maturity. Now, I want to give you some tools for when you are feeling indecisive. Indecisive means you cannot make a decision. You might say, "I am wishy-washy about it." Wishy-washy is a funny, informal word for not being firm. Or you can say, "I am sitting on the fence." Imagine sitting on a fence between two fields. You are not on this side or that side. You can say, "I am still sitting on the fence about which car to buy." Eventually, you have to take the plunge. To take the plunge means to finally make a bold decision. You can say, "I finally took the plunge and signed up for the advanced English course." Let's explore the feeling of relief in more detail. Relief is physical. Your shoulders drop. You breathe out. You can say, "I breathed a sigh of relief." It is almost like a physical weight is gone. If something was worrying you and it turned out to be fine, you can say it was a false alarm. A false alarm is a warning that turns out to be nothing. You might say, "I thought I lost my passport, but it was just a false alarm. It was in my bag." We are nearing the end of our time, but I want to talk about the feeling of gratitude one more time. Gratitude is a practice. You can keep a gratitude journal. Every day, write down 3 things you are thankful for. It rewires your brain to look for the good. You can say, "I am thankful for my health, my family, and this opportunity to learn." Practicing gratitude changes your vibe. Your vibe is your emotional atmosphere. People like to be around people with a good vibe. You can say, "She gives off such a positive vibe." Let's talk about the future of your English. You might feel ambitious. You want to be fluent. Fluency is not just about grammar, it is about flow. Flow is a mental state where everything is easy. You lose track of time. You can say, "I was in a state of flow while I was writing." Aim for flow, not perfection. Perfectionism can be a trap. It paralyzes you. You are afraid to make a mistake, so you say nothing. That is fear. Choose courage over perfection. Make mistakes. Laugh at them. Learn from them. Move on. I want to leave you with a very powerful idea. Emotional resilience. Life will knock you down. You will have bad days. You will have embarrassing moments in English. That is guaranteed. But resilience is the ability to stand up, brush yourself off, and keep going. To brush yourself off means to clean the dust off your clothes after a fall. It is a metaphor for recovering from a setback. You can say, "I failed the test, but I am going to brush myself off and try again." That is the attitude of a winner. Welcome to the final leg of our incredible journey into the world of emotions here on English in Advance. I am Jessica, and I am deeply impressed by your commitment. If you are still listening, it means you are not just learning English. You are living it. You are ready to move beyond the basics and explore the hidden corners of the language. In this final section, we are going to explore how culture affects emotion, how to describe physical pain and health feelings, and we will learn some beautiful poetic words that don't just describe a feeling, they describe a state of soul. We will also talk about the specific emotions of travel and adventure, which I know many of you love. So for the last time in this series, let's open our minds and hearts and finish strong. Let's begin with a fascinating topic: cultural differences in expressing emotion. In English, particularly in British culture, you might hear the phrase "keep a stiff upper lip." This is a very famous idiom. It means to not show your feelings when you are upset. If your lip is trembling, you might cry. So keeping a stiff upper lip means staying strong and stoic. You might say he received the bad news with a stiff upper lip. However, in American culture, we are often more open. We might say, let it all out. This means do not hold back your tears or your anger. Understanding these cultural differences helps you interpret what people are really saying. If a British person says, I am a bit miffed, they might actually be very angry. Miffed is a soft word for annoyed. If an American says, I am super excited, they might just be polite. Context is your best friend. Now, let's talk about the emotions of travel. Many English learners love to travel. There's a beautiful word we borrowed from German called wanderlust. Wanderlust is a strong desire to travel and explore the world. You can say, I have a serious case of wanderlust. When you finally go on that trip, you might feel a sense of wonder, but you might also feel culture shock. Culture shock is the feeling of confusion and disorientation when you are in a new culture. You might feel overwhelmed by the noise, the food, or the language. You can say, I experienced some culture shock when I first arrived in Tokyo, but eventually you adapt. You might get itchy feet. This is a fun idiom. It does not mean your feet literally itch. It means you want to leave and travel again. You can say, I have been home for 3 months and I am already getting itchy feet. Travel also brings feelings of serendipity. Serendipity is one of my favorite words in the English language. It means finding something good without looking for it. It is a happy accident. Maybe you missed your train, but because of that, you met a new friend at the station. That is serendipity. You can say meeting her was pure serendipity. A related word is ephemeral. This describes something that lasts for a very short time. A sunset is ephemeral. A holiday romance might be ephemeral. It is a sad but beautiful feeling because you know it will end. You can say we enjoyed the ephemeral beauty of the cherry blossoms. Let's shift to a very practical and important topic, describing physical feelings and pain. This is vital if you ever need to go to a doctor in an English-speaking country. You cannot just say it hurts. You need to be specific. If the pain is beating like a heart, we call it a throbbing pain. You might say, I have a throbbing headache. If the pain is sharp and sudden, like a needle, it is a stinging pain. If the pain is constant but not too strong, it is a dull ache. You might say, I have a dull ache in my lower back. If your stomach hurts because you are nervous, we already learned butterflies. But if it hurts because you are sick, you might feel nauseous. Nauseous means you want to vomit. It is an unpleasant feeling, but you need to know the word. You can say the turbulent flight made me feel nauseous. Sometimes we feel general physical discomfort. We have a great idiom for this, under the weather. If you are feeling under the weather, you are slightly sick, maybe a cold or a headache. You can say, I cannot come to work today. I am feeling a bit under the weather. If you are recovering, you can say, I am on the mend. To be on the mend means you are getting better. These phrases make you sound very natural and fluent. Let's go deeper into the mind. Let's talk about the difference between loneliness and solitude. We discussed loneliness before. It is sad, but solitude is happy. Solitude is being alone because you want to be. It is peaceful. You can say, I went to the cabin to enjoy the solitude. Many creative people need solitude to work. Another mental state is clarity. Clarity is when everything makes sense. You might say, after a good night's sleep, I finally had some clarity about the problem. The opposite is fog. You can say, I have brain fog. This is very common when you are learning a language. It feels like your brain is full of cotton wool and you cannot think fast. Do not worry. Brain fog passes. I want to teach you some words about determination and stubbornness. If you refuse to change your mind, you are stubborn. This can be bad. But if you refuse to give up on a goal, you are persistent. This is good. You can say he is very persistent. He applied for the job 3 times before he got it. A stronger word is tenacious. A tenacious person holds on tight and never lets go. You are tenacious for listening to this long podcast. You can say she is a tenacious learner. Let's explore the concept of gut feeling. Your gut is your stomach, but in this context, it means your intuition. A gut feeling is when you know something without knowing why. You can say, I have a gut feeling that this is a bad idea, or my gut tells me to trust him. Learning to listen to your gut is a big part of emotional intelligence. Sometimes your logic says one thing, but your gut says another. In English, we often advise people to trust your gut. Now let's look at the vocabulary of surprise and shock in a crisis. If something terrible happens, you might be traumatized. Trauma is a deep emotional wound. But if you are just very confused and chaotic, we might say you are flustered. To be flustered means you are rushing around and making mistakes because you are stressed. You can say I got flustered when I could not find my passport at the airport. A good advice for someone who is flustered is pull yourself together. This is a slightly harsh command. It means stop panicking and organize yourself. You can say I had to tell myself to pull myself together. There is a very specific emotion called cringe, which we touched on, but let's expand it. Cringe is that feeling of secondhand embarrassment, but there is also a feeling called schadenfreude. This is actually a German word that English speakers use. It means taking pleasure in someone else's misfortune. It is a dark emotion. If your enemy falls in the mud and you laugh, that is schadenfreude. We do not have a perfect English word for it, so we stole the German one. This happens a lot in English. We also use the French phrase déjà vu. Déjà vu is the feeling that you have seen or done something before, even though it is new. You can say I had a weird sense of déjà vu when I walked into the room. Let's talk about the feeling of being authentic. To be authentic means to be real. It means your outside matches your inside. People love authenticity. You can say, I really appreciate his authenticity. The opposite is being fake or superficial. If someone is superficial, they only care about appearances. You might say, I felt the conversation was a bit superficial. We want deep connections. To have a deep connection, you need to open up. To open up means to share your private thoughts. You can say it took him a long time to open up to me. I want to introduce you to the concept of emotional agility. This is a modern psychological term. Emotional agility is the ability to move through your emotions quickly and not get stuck. Imagine a gymnast. They are agile. They can jump and turn. You want to be emotionally agile. If you feel sad, feel it, then move to hope. Do not get stuck in sadness. You can say, I am practicing emotional agility. Let's do a final storytelling practice. I want to tell you a story about a travel disaster that turned into a triumph. Listen for the words: anticipation, mishap, frantic, kindness, gratitude, serendipity. I had been planning my trip to Paris for months. The anticipation was killing me. I was so eager to see the Eiffel Tower, but when I arrived at the airport, I realized I had left my wallet on the plane. It was a major mishap. A mishap is a small accident or mistake. I was frantic. Frantic means wild with fear. I ran back to the gate, but the plane was gone. I felt completely helpless. I sat on a bench and buried my head in my hands. Then, a stranger tapped me on the shoulder. It was a flight attendant. She had found my wallet. I was overcome with gratitude. I thanked her profusely. Profusely means a lot. Because of the delay, I missed my bus. But while I was waiting for the next one, I met a musician who was also going to Paris. We started talking, and he invited me to his concert that night. It was pure serendipity. If I had not lost my wallet, I never would have met him. The concert was the highlight of my trip. This story shows how emotions change rapidly. Anticipation to panic, panic to helplessness, helplessness to gratitude, and finally to joy. When you tell your stories, remember that the bad parts make the good parts better. If I just said, I went to Paris and it was nice, it is a boring story. The lost wallet provides the drama. Drama is about conflict and emotion. Use your English to create drama in your stories. Let's talk about the feeling of vindication. Vindication is when you are proven right after people doubted you. It is a very satisfying feeling. Maybe everyone said you could not learn English, and now you are fluent. You feel vindicated. You can say, I felt a sense of vindication when I passed the advanced exam. We also have the feeling of awe regarding time. Time flies when you are having fun. That is a famous idiom, but sometimes time drags. To drag means to move slowly. You can say the last hour of work really dragged. Being aware of time is an emotional experience. We also have the fear of running out of time. We call this a ticking clock. You might say I feel a ticking clock regarding my career goals. This creates urgency. Urgency is the feeling that something must be done now. I want to address the feeling of being an imposter. This is called imposter syndrome. It is very common among high achievers and language learners. You feel like a fraud. You feel like you are not really good at English. You are just faking it. I want you to know that this is normal. Even native speakers feel this way sometimes. You can say, I struggle with imposter syndrome, but I am learning to trust my skills. Let's talk about the power of the word yet. If you say, I do not understand, it is final. It is negative. But if you say, I do not understand yet, it is hopeful. It implies that you will understand in the future. This is called a growth mindset. A growth mindset is the belief that you can improve. The opposite is a fixed mindset. Use the word yet as often as you can. I am not fluent yet. I have not visited London yet. It keeps the door open. We should also discuss the feeling of empathy burnout. We talked about empathy, but if you care too much for too long, you can get tired. This is common for nurses and teachers. You need to set boundaries. A boundary is an emotional line that people cannot cross. You can say, I need to set some boundaries to protect my mental health. This is a very strong and healthy thing to do. As we wrap up this massive collection of emotional vocabulary, I want to talk about the feeling of pride. Not the bad kind of arrogant pride, but the good kind, self-respect. You should feel a deep sense of self-respect for the effort you are putting in. Learning a language changes your brain. It makes you more open-minded. Being open-minded is a feeling and an attitude. It means you are willing to accept new ideas. Let's review some of the key idioms we learned across all parts of this script. We had butterflies in the stomach, walking on eggshells, burning the candle at both ends, feeling under the weather, over the moon, and down in the dumps. Down in the dumps is another way to say sad. You can say he has been down in the dumps since he lost his job. Try to pick 3 idioms from this entire series and use them tomorrow, just 3. If you try to use 20, you will get flustered. If you use 3, you will feel confident. I want to give you a final challenge. I want you to write a letter to your future self. In this letter, describe how you feel right now about your English. Be honest. Say, I am frustrated by phrasal verbs, or I am excited about my progress. Then write about how you hope to feel in 1 year. I hope to feel confident. I hope to feel at ease. To be at ease means to be relaxed and comfortable. Put this letter in a drawer and read it in a year. You will be amazed by how much you have changed. We have reached the end of our marathon. We have spoken over 10,000 words together. We have laughed, we have analyzed, and we have explored the human condition. English is more than just a tool for business or travel. It is a way to expand your soul. It is a way to understand people from the other side of the planet. When you say I understand how you feel to someone in their own language, you are building a bridge of peace. That is the power you hold. Thank you, truly, for listening to English in Advance. I am your host, Jessica. It has been an absolute honor to guide you through this deep dive into feelings and emotions. Please subscribe, share this with your friends, and keep listening. Your journey is just beginning. Go out there, speak up, and let the world know who you are. Goodbye, and have a wonderful, emotional, beautiful day.